I really am happy to be here with you, Anushka. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us because you had a very big aha moment recently in your internship. This was after taking the public speaking course, you're working at your internship, which is a communications related internship, and your department manager and the vice president ask you to deliver a presentation to all of the other department managers on a communication topic, and they want you to do it live virtually. So they want you to do this online, you as the intern talking to all the department managers. So tell us a little bit about how that all went down and how were you feeling to deliver a presentation to all the managers?
Well, we had like a 6 week check in with my manager and department head, the VP, and they were talking to me about everything I've learned that far in the internship and how I felt like that aspect of communication was related to what I was learning in school with communications, being a communications major. And so they said, why don't you just make a presentation? We have these bi-weekly meetings with all the department heads, and you can really just showcase everything that you've learned, whether it be at school or through the internship, and just explain a topic of communication that you find interesting that they don't really interact with in a day-to-day setting. Because I worked in the IT department as a communications major. So most of the people there are very technical based and work with software and computers rather than writing and presenting. So the topic that I chose was nonverbal communication, and I was terrified. I feel like if I didn't take this public speaking class, I would have been even more scared. I have no idea what I would even do because I feel like this course provided so much of a baseline of how to analyze your audience, how to gather information generally, and then make it relevant to who you're talking to.
And
And
of course, do
also,
you see my beaming smile over here? Because that makes me so happy to hear and know and listening to you express yourself about the value of taking a public speaking course. So we spend time in class, and I love the topic you picked, of course, nonverbal communication, one of the things we stress in the classroom too. Why did you decide to pick this nonverbal communication out of all the topics to bring up?
I was debating between a bunch of different topics. I was debating between like verbal communication competence in general, and then I just had a bunch of different ideas, but I presented a list of them to my manager, and she said that she thought nonverbal communication was a topic that not a lot of people are aware about because it's a very subliminal thing. Like if you fidget with a ring, you usually don't realize you're doing it. If you're sending a message by like avoiding eye contact, you're not usually aware that, oh, it looks like I'm nervous or like I'm withholding information. So I feel like it's a topic that once you're aware of the patterns, it can really help everyone in their day to day lives.
What are your top three tips for people on nonverbal communication when you are presenting virtually?
First of all, a main point is that eye contact is not me looking at your eyes right now, it's me looking at the camera. And that's something that I still have to actively remind myself because it's not eyes and it's eye contact.
Exactly.
This isn't really one that a lot of people take into consideration, but it's an aspect called chronemics or like time orientation. And I feel like in going onto a meeting, especially in a company where so many people are from different parts of the world, I learned that cultural time orientation means different things in different places, especially with working with people in Asia or South America, because their idea of completing a task is not super task based. Like in America, we focus so much on tasks rather than relationships. And even though it's not something that you yourself, like your body is presenting non-verbally, it's still a non-verbal aspect that's important to take into consideration, especially when you're working with so many different people, being aware of the differences in mindset.
So far, Anushka, you've shared with us an important first tip is eye contact to the lens rather than to the screen. So that's what mimics natural eye contact. Secondly, you shared with us the importance of chronemics and understanding our body clock and also being aware of cultural differences when it comes to how people manage their time or how they spend their time in business. What is your third tip for us when it comes to nonverbal communication?
I think that my third point that I find very important is how you're physically presenting yourself on camera, because it's different than being in a live setting because you have your whole body to present and adjust and communicate with. But in a mediated setting, you only have a rectangle to work with. And so making sure that you're communicating effectively with your hands and not remaining too stagnant with your body or your facial expressions, you want to make sure that you're still remaining expressive and communicating in a way that's still human, even though it's through a screen.
Absolutely, and really great tips. And I learned along the way in my travels too from Vanessa Van Edwards at the Science of People. I definitely recommend everybody check that out for more on nonverbal communication. But I did learn from her the term that our hands are our trust indicators. And so we want to make sure that we can frame ourselves up so that our hands are visible. So often I see students and people where all you see is this or there it's like an upshot, a nostril
Mm-hmm.
shot, a double chin shot, shooting from down low. And I understand the tendency because it's a little easier to place things lower, but it's definitely not flattering and does not project confidence. So how we frame ourselves up, even the lighting, though we're not talking about lighting and all that today, but so many things that go into presenting ourselves with confidence. Speaking of confidence, I know that one of the things you're so thankful for having received from the course is feeling more confident. So, not just the practical skills, but a mindset shift in feeling more confident, which I'm hoping is what helped you feel really good about presenting to a team of leaders as an intern, where you're all the managers of the people that you're presenting a communication topic to. So, tell me a little bit about how that unfolded for you. What was going on in your mind as you were preparing?
When I was first outlining all the information, I was severely overwhelmed because it is so much information. Nonverbal communication is such a huge topic. And I was asked to condense it in like 15, 17 minutes. And how am I going to get everything I want to say out while still communicating it effectively in a way that sticks with the audience? So I went back into my public speaking notes. I went back into the Canvas site and I opened up the outlines and I just went back to last semester mentally a little bit and was organizing my speech in a way that flowed and had all the relevant information out. I feel like making an outline is so important. And this class really solidified that for me. I feel like without an outline, you're just kind of talking about the topic, but you might not necessarily be making all relevant points or points that relevant to your topic and also to your audience, I mean.
And how was your content received?
So I actually couldn't see them during my presentation because it was through Microsoft Teams and I had a slideshow, so it hid my audience's faces. But they did do a recording of the speech, so I watched it back and everyone's reactions, everyone looked very engaged and entertained with the topic.
So happy to hear that your audience had a very positive response,
Yeah.
and important to watch recordings too because we learn so much about ourselves when we watch the recording back as we want, especially if we want to become better speakers. So now
Yeah,
how was it for you after it's all said and done? What was the direct input from the manager and the VP that asked you to do this? What did they say? Did they appreciate you? Did they encourage you? Did they have
Mhm.
some tips for you? What was it like, the wrap up conversation after?
Well, I obviously asked for feedback because I always want to improve my speaking and my writing. And they didn't have too much negative feedback. Most of it was just incorporating more real world examples in like applying the content to the workplace, because I feel like at some points it was obviously a very informational, informative speech, but at some points I could have tied it into the workplace more. But
That's a really
overall,
that's a really great point of feedback for them too, and
yeah,
something that you can now add to your toolkit. You are obviously not that same demographic, right? Everybody else
yeah.
is a full-time employee at a managerial level at the organization, and you're an intern.
Mhm.
So, and that will happen everywhere that we go. We may not necessarily be in the same cohort, the same grouping as our audience. Myself as a college professor, I'm not in the same demographic as my students, but I stay very connected to them by asking for relevant examples through my learning assistants who are college students, or asking students directly. So that's a great point to remember. Real world examples that people in your audience can relate to. And sometimes we get them from the audience members themselves. We can ask the people running the workshop, running the training, hey, are there two or three people that I can talk to in advance? I want to ask some questions and see what some of the areas they might be struggling with in nonverbal communication as managers. Now, let me ask you this. If you could summarize your entire message for the audience in one sentence, right? So you really have to think, what am I going to bring this content down to? What is it that you would say? What is your message to the audience in one sentence?
I think that being able to present both yourself and information to a group is a skill that everyone should develop and keep on practicing, because public speaking is pretty much inevitable, whether it's for school or work or a speech at a wedding, even. And the more you practice, the more confident you are in both public speaking and your day to day speaking, because I feel like personally I'm more aware of how I speak and how I'm presenting myself.
And if you had to put your message on a t shirt, so you only have so much room, what would your message be? What goes on the t shirt?
My message would be practice what you speak. I think that that's a really key point.
Absolutely. And we know that saying, practice what you preach. This is what we're saying,
Mhm.
practice how you speak. So it reminds
Yeah.
me of that. That's very cool. And, we talk about confidence and mindset and being able to be ourselves and nonverbal communication. It's been such a great conversation. I love asking students to, because self care is so important to me and a message I want to pass on to everybody. What's the most recent thing that you did that was just for you and just for fun? Something that was meant to take really good care of yourself?
I recently have really been getting into art, but I'm not a very creative person in that like I can come up with my own concepts. So I started doing paint by numbers, and they're so fun. I think that everyone needs to get one. Like they have ones with so many little circles that take a lot of like fixating on, and then they have easier ones. And I feel like you get a really great painting. It's pretty much guaranteed, but it's still a way to be with yourself.
I agree with you, and I've done that too. I have an adult coloring book that I'm very happy to have. Sometimes you just need that, and for some reason the colors and the image just puts you in a very different mindset. So that's
Mhm,
very cool that you do that. I love that. And then my
mhm,
last question for you, Anushka, is if you had to go back in time and talk to your 18-year-old self, which isn't that long ago because now you
mhm.
are
20.
20. So if you had to go back in time 2 years, right before you start college, what would you say to yourself?
I would just tell myself, stop being so afraid. I was so afraid to put myself out there for no reason, because everybody's new to college. Like everyone coming in as a freshman, yeah, they have different backgrounds, but everyone is being thrown into this new situation. You're not alone in it.
Wow, that's a really powerful message. I love that. And something that I think we need to share with people. So I'm so happy to have this platform and to have you come on today and to share because students need to hear this. Adults, everyone at every age needs to hear this. We the fear prevents us from moving forward and doing the things that we want to do. Yet we talk to people who've been through things. They want to go back in time and say just what you said. Stop being so afraid. So I love that you shared that message and thank you so much for your time today. I loved hearing that you were able to apply the skills in class at your internship, presenting to a group of managers, and that it was successful and that you felt good about it. I just feel so thrilled, and that makes my little teaching heart very happy today. Thank you for sharing the message, Anushka. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for providing me with the tools so that I could do that presentation.